Hey everybody, I'm Rousseau and I do a little work here and there. You are watching Raconteur Weekly, and looks like this week we're going to do something else a little different. Because guess what? Unreal Engine 4 is free. Well, I mean, a lot of engines are free now. So I figure there's no reason to not pick one up and see if you can't make something interesting. One reason I was so interested in this is because you don't have to project with perspective, which is something that you do have to do in most video editing softwares. Here I'm just looking at my game mode, which is largely unchanged. I've changed the default pawn type to my camera pawn because I'm not trying to control characters. I'm trying to control a camera and then click on those characters and tell them to do different things. So if I'm not controlling all these characters, who is? An AI controller. So instead of a player controller, an AI controller. And the blueprint here is pretty simplistic. I'm using an interface to pass vector information between different blueprints. So when the camera notices that something has been clicked, it can execute custom events in other places. So basically this takes that vector information and passes it from the camera to the character, and then the character can decide what to do with it on its own. And speak of the devil, here's that interface. The interface just has a function inside, nothing special about that except it has a fairly unique name and an input, which in this case is a vector. And that's just so that you can call this function from multiple places, just wherever you need it. Of course, my first concern when I picked this up was not getting into the nitty-gritty of all this blueprinting, scripting stuff. I just wanted to be able to take a project, define some inputs, and have a camera I can move around, and maybe be able to click on some people. I was willing to learn that later. So this is where that heavy lifting is done. Calling this my camera character, I guess. My camera pawn, and it's currently the default pawn type. This first section defines all of the mouse stuff. So things like when you click in an area with a particular mouse button, what is there? Is it a character? If it is, can we select it? Is it already selected? It just asks a bunch of questions and passes things around. And I guess there's also a bit there about moving the camera to a thing that you've selected. Just stuff like that. Now, if we move to the other side, I've got all my keyboard input stuff. This is keyboard input for the camera. I haven't done too much yet, but I've got like a WASD, and then I've got a few other keys because I want to move the camera forward and backward, left and right. I want to rotate it, and I want to be able to zoom it in and out. The zooming is a little different just because I'm using an orthographic camera instead of perspective, so I just changed the ortho width instead of changing the length of a spring arm or whatever. Anyway, let's see what it looks like. Okay, yeah, well, pretty standard. I can move the camera around with WASD. You can see I've placed a character here. This is just the default. If I click on him, I get a little unit selected notification, and the camera centers on him. And from this point, if I click around, the camera will follow, but if I move the camera at any point, he's still selected, and I can still click and move him around and all that stuff. Clicking back on the unit moves the camera back to him, though I am thinking about adding a button for this once I decide, like, the scope of this whole thing, you know, passed for fun. But yeah, it's what you'd expect. I've got Q and E rotating the screen clockwise and counterclockwise. You notice it does it 45 degrees at a time. It's just like a stylistic choice. You could make that smooth, but not really interested. And you've got the camera zoom, which again is ortho width, not a spring arm. Looks pretty cool. Works pretty well. I mean, I guess I've got a few plans. I've got things that I'd like to do with this, and most of those have to do with how it looks. But, you know, first I gotta have a system. I gotta be able to move stuff around. So this is the beginning of that. And unfortunately, it's all the time that I have for today, because I gotta dig back into this stuff. I gotta figure out, you know, what all can I do? Because I think we could do some pretty cool things if we just apply ourselves, take a little bit of time. So until next time, you've been watching Raconteur Weekly on Rousseau Works, and I am Rousseau, out.